Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Welcome to the Clear to Send show. This is Francois, your host. So while Roel is enjoying his time in France, taking some time off from work, I'm going to spend today a little time talking about what it means to be an engineer, like what it means to be an engineer in the IT industry nowadays. I think it's not going to be really a technical episode. I just wanted to talk about how I see my job and share it with you guys to see if that's how you see it as well every day, and then and maybe you can exchange on that topic. So right before we get right into the subject, I'm going to present one of the quick interview we did with Roel back in June at Cisco Live. And this way we're going to get to know Daniel Cavazos a little bit better. So here it is, the quick interview of Daniel Cavazos. What's your name?
Daniel Cavazos.
Where do you live?
San Antonio, Texas.
Where were you born?
Bay City, Texas.
What is special about that place?
It's not special.
Okay. What is your job?
My job, I am a wireless infrastructure sales engineer.
Who do you work for?
Ventive Wireless Infrastructure.
Okay. Why did you decide to do the work you're doing now?
It's a passion.
What would you do if you were not doing Wi-Fi?
Sales.
Okay. What could you give a 40 minutes presentation on with absolutely no preparation?
Outdoor enclosure and Wi-Fi deployments.
What is something you think everything should do at least once in their life?
Bungee jump.
What do you think your job will look like in 10 years?
Very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yes.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Right, and then with the episode, we'll publish a nice picture that Roel took of Daniel to go along with this interview. And we still have a few that we haven't published, and we'll keep publishing as we go once in a while. So going back to the main subject of this episode, what does it mean to be an engineer nowadays? To start thinking about this, I actually went back to the original definition of what an engineer is. So if you look at, in the dictionary, the definition of an engineer, it's telling us, I found actually two different definitions. The first one is states that an engineer is a person who designs, builds, or maintains engines, machines, or structures. And the second one I found was a person qualified in a branch of engineering, especially as a professional. So I think nowadays, being an engineer in IT, like a Wi-Fi engineer, network engineer, falls more into the second definition. But originally, engineer comes from engine, and it comes from the person that was building, designing the engine. All right. So in IT environments nowadays, I think my definition of what an engineer is would be more related to, finding solutions or problem solving oriented, right? So our job would be to find solutions to complex problems, right? And use our technical background to find these solutions. Right, it's not something that's obvious. It's something that needs to be engineered, and we need to use our technical expertise to be able to engineer those solutions. Right. So it's the goal of an engineer is to pretty much solve problems, and it could be solving problems in different ways. Right. It could be designing a new solution, designing a new Wi-Fi network. Right. You take the customer has a problematic. Right, it has some requirements, and you need to take all these requirements and somehow find the best solution. Right, engineer the best solution. Right, it could also be related to updating or maintaining current Wi-Fi infrastructure, right? That's still problematic. Maybe a new the customer is coming with a new client device they want to use, or they're coming up with a new application they need to deploy on the Wi-Fi, and you need to update or you need to maintain the current Wi-Fi infrastructure. So that's another problem we need to solve, right? Or it could be troubleshooting a Wi-Fi issue, right? You could have an issue in your environment and you need to troubleshoot it. You need to find the solution to the problem you currently have, right? And all of this, I think what's common to all of these tasks is that we need to understand what we're doing. We need to understand what we're doing, and we need to use our technical skills to find the solution, right? On the purely technical level, that's pretty much what our job is, okay? And I think once you understand this, when you understand that our job is more related to finding solutions to complex problem solving, and it's easier. I think it's easier to embrace it. When I first started when I was studying at university, and we were learning about different type of jobs and different things you could do once you step in the enterprise world. I was thinking to myself, I never want to deal with problems. I just want to work as an architect or a sales engineer and just work on the beginning of the project, just implement the solution, and I'd never want to be dealing with problems. But as I started to work and sharing my time with more experienced engineers, I started to understand the whole idea of being an engineer, and I started to embrace finding solutions to issues. Rather, if it was designing a new solution, or if it was troubleshooting a network issue, I would just embrace it and see it as a challenge, right? And that's still how I think nowadays. I just take everything as a challenge. If something is not working, I'm like, oh great, something is not working, that's a challenge for me. I'm going to find the solution, right? I'm going to use my technical skills, I'm going to do the research, I'm going to test, and I'm going to find a solution. And I embrace it totally, and I find that it's much easier to do your work if you do it that way, right? You see it in the positive way versus seeing it in a negative way, saying, oh, it never works, or this is another issue I have to deal with, right? So I try to embrace it, see it as a challenge, and it makes it easier to approach it. Also, it's going through the process of finding solutions to a complex issue. You actually learn a lot along the way, right? So you also have to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow as an engineer. And if you do it properly, if you do it with a method and thoroughly, you can use that experience afterward when you move on, and if you face the same issue another day, right? You can reuse the same type of solution. You can try to see if you can adapt the solution that you find the first time. Try to see if it would work the second time, and then inspire. It could inspire you to find the second solution. And when I have an anecdote to share, the first time the first job I got, I was working with an engineer, and he was working as a programmer, and he loved to troubleshoot or debug, right? We call it debug in programming. So he loved to debug. So, and I found it a little weird at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, he loves to debug. That's like the worst in programming. To me, it was the worst. But the guy, he had some more experience, and he had learned so much debugging programs that he just saw the value into it, and he saw it as a challenge every time, and he wouldn't stop before finding the solution. So, and those type of behaviors also inspired me to see my job in a different way, and embrace it totally. Also, when you find the solution and you see that it works, it's a very good feeling. It's a very rewarding feeling. So that's kind of like the end of it, right? You had a complex issue, you find the solution, and it works in our case, it would be, it works for the end user. The end user has a good experience, and they're grateful, and it's rewarding for you. Okay, so I think that's the core of it. I think that's the definition that I would give to a more modern engineer in the IT industry or in the Wi-Fi space. And that's kind of how I see my job every day. Now, what important skills do we need as an engineer? What I think is that we need to be able to understand why we're doing certain things, right? So if we bring it back to Wi-Fi, we kind of need to understand why Wi-Fi works in certain ways, right? And this will help us to do the planning, right? To do the planning, do the research in order to be able to find the best solution. So being able to understand why it works a certain way, you're going to be able to make the better solution, the better technical solutions, and find the right solution to your problems. And this involves, reading a lot of documentations, doing some research, and also sometimes doing some lab experiment and seeing how it works, and understand why it works certain ways. Okay, it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but I think it's important in order to be better as an engineer and take the best decisions. Because at the end of the day, when you find the solution to your problem, to your complex problem, you use your technical skills, and you're going to have to be responsible for that solution, right? People are going to trust you. They're going to trust that you use your technical skills to come up with the best solution, right? So, and if you better understand how it works and why it works in a certain way, I feel like you can take better decisions and overall get the better results. Right, so be able to understand the why, and also be able to understand how to do things, right, and how it works, right. So for that, you could just you could experiment, right. It's kind of like going back to the older definition of an engineer, someone building an engine. So it's kind of like if you have to build an engine, first of all, you're gonna have to design it on paper, try to define exactly what you want. Type of engine you want, number of cylinders and everything. Do you want, electric engine versus gas engine, and so on. And then you design everything on paper, and then you're going to test it. You're going to do a prototype, right? You're going to build a prototype, make sure it doesn't explode, make sure it has enough power to handle what you want to do. So it's kind of like the same thing for us. Like once we understand, the technology, and then we picked up what we wanted, we kind of have to experiment it, to lab it. Right, lab it. Sometimes we call it proof of concept, and put all the pieces together and see if it works. Right, if it doesn't work, we can adjust. We can make tweak a little bit and make sure the overall solution works at the end and solve the initial problems. Right, we find the perfect solution for the initial problems. Right, and then this step of understanding how to do things and how it works. It will help us, to learn also, right? We'll learn what the roadblocks could be, and we could use that knowledge, afterwards for other projects, right? We all know, like we always have bad surprises, something you think it would work, and then when you actually do it, it doesn't work the way you want it to, or your case is the one case that it doesn't work for. So we've all been there, and the fact of trying it, labbing it, experimenting it, it's going to help us to know how to do things, how it works, and it's going to avoid to have these type of scenarios where, it doesn't work. At the end, I have to readjust my solutions last minute. So I think it's important to go through that step as well. And then as you go through the step of understanding why it works a certain way and how it works and how to do it, I think it's very important to be methodical about it and thorough, and it's important to document everything you do on a technical basis, so you can refer back to what you've done. And if you guys are like me, like I forget pretty fast, so if I don't write down information or something I do, I would forget about it. And then when it comes time to face the same issue, I'm like, oh man, I can't remember what I did last time, and it would take me a little time to find the same solution. So it's better to just document what we do, and then so it's easier to refer back after that if you have to face the same issue. And the fact of documenting it as well, it's just it can help your brain to just summarize the information, right? And it can help you to be more methodical about it. And then when you find a solution, you always need to be able to support it, right? And to because you're going to be responsible for it, so you're going to have to support it and understand how it works. So if you could document it as well, you can use that to explain how it works. All right, going back to that specific topic, I think that nowadays being an engineer is not only about the technical aspect of it. I think we also need to have non-technical skills, right? And we're going to have to use those non-technical skills to communicate, right? We're going to be able to communicate with other engineers, right? If we need to share an idea, if we need to be challenged, we need to be able to communicate on a technical level. But we also need to be able to communicate to less technical persons, right? We need to be able to communicate to the management team, to customers. We need to be able to communicate to project managers that might not have the same technical level as us, right? And we need to be able to adapt our speech to, each person, so they understand. So the idea we need to carry across, can be understood by the person we're talking to. And that's really related to, interpersonal communication skills, and be able to understand who you're talking to and adapt your speech. And I think that's an important skills nowadays. And sometimes you're going to have to explain your solution, right? And your solution might be very technical, but sometimes you're going to have to explain it in a way that you're going to be able to back it up, support it, sell it to the management team, right? And so you're going to have to find ways to do that in a matter of, in a more simpler way, so the management team can understand the benefit, and then can support you in your solution, right? Sometimes you have to sell it to a customer. It's kind of like the same idea. So at that time, your technical, the skills that will help you to communicate, summarize the idea, be able to outline the benefits, and the pros and cons of each solutions, will help you to be a better engineer. Also, you need to be able to document your work. That's something that I'm very strict about with myself. I try to document my work. I think it comes back to when I attended university. They were very strict with that. They wanted us to document everything we did. So I kind of kept that with me. It's if you work on a project, you're gonna have to share the information with the team, with your customer. If someone is replacing you, you're gonna have to transfer the knowledge to another engineer. So anyway, you need to put the information down on paper, right? You need to be able to reference to the technical information, detailing your solution, right? So for Wi-Fi work, it might be a design report, installation guide. It might be a troubleshooting report. It might be a validation survey report. And then depending on who you're sending the document to, you can also adapt the documentation, right? If you're sending the information to an engineer, you can be more technical, more detailed. If you're sending the information to a manager, you can be more, you can summarize and go straight to the point, and then, send him like an exec summary type of report. So you can use those interpersonal skills as well to adapt your documentation, and just focus on the information you need, right? So I think it's important as well as a non-technical skills. So be able to communicate, be able to write, perform your writing skills. Obviously, an engineer will not have the writing skill of a journalist, but at least being able to summarize the idea. I like to, in my documentation, I like to include diagrams as well. It just summarize. Sometimes it helps summarize complex ideas in an easier form, easier to read, and you can use that for network diagrams as well. I use them a lot. So Yeah, so in a nutshell, that's kind of like how I see my job as a Wi-Fi engineer. I try to keep that in mind, to try to embrace every challenge I get. I try to take any opportunity to solve particular problems, and I'm very happy when I'm working hard to find the solutions, and then when the solution works out, I'm very happy to see that I've done my job. In my head, I'm like, okay, I've done my job this time, and then it's very rewarding. So yeah, so please let me know, or let us know how you see your job. Do you see your job being the same? What do you think? What do you think? Do you have any other aspect of the job that you think are important? What other things what other skills do you think are important for us to have in order to be good engineers, and then also in order to be able to improve? Technology is changing all the time, so we kind of have to keep up with the changes, and then we could use our experience to be better, to solve problems faster. We can use different skills also to be able to solve problems faster. So maybe you guys can share some of the ideas you have. Feel free to comment on the blog article, or to share the episode on Twitter and tell us what you think. All right. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me. I hope this was interesting, and then we'll be back next week with Roel with the next episode of the Clear to Send show. Thank you guys for listening. Bye bye.